Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this live session. For some of you that don't know me, I'm Miguel Quina Ribeiro. I'm from Portugal, and we do a lot of project managing. We do web and mobile apps. And the last weeks, we've been talking about how to social selling, how to do more with your applications, your website. So we're always thinking in terms of speed, performance, optimizing. But today we have a different topic. It's still a hot topic. We've got James Clifford with us. Thank you, James, for joining us. So today, instead of just doing more or doing faster or selling more, we're talking about securing your business. And this is a hot topic. We've been seeing on the news and during the pandemic, all these data breaches, all these hackers, all these ransomware. And we hope that James can give us some tips today. We've invited some of our clients, our suppliers, our friends. Even though we're going to talk about business, this also applies to individuals. So everyone that is online, we need to be careful. So again, thank you, James. Thank you, everyone. We will have also the opportunity, if you have any questions during the program, you can put them on the comments. We'll try to address them. We'll ask James, take all the information we can get from you, James. So, James, what do you have to say to us about cybersecurity strategy?
What an intro. Well, yeah, thank you, Miguel. Yeah, as we were talking about earlier, we want to really talk about small businesses because, with some of the things that we see in the news with cybersecurity, it's usually big businesses that get all the attention with, everything, being hacked and all this going off. But it's not that often that you see a small business that's on the news, but it still happens. And it's understandable why it happens to a lot of businesses, small businesses. I mean, there's about 66% once in a survey that said that they've been affected one way or another, and 63% they've been a victim of a data breach with actual severe financial consequences. But the reason it happens is because, like me, like you, small business, we kind of concentrate on growing as businesses, don't we? We're just kind of, we haven't really got that other people that we can rely on too much. We kind of wear multiple hats, don't we? Like everything from HR to, admin and invoicing and marketing, so sometimes it can, unfortunately, get off in the background, which is not good. But there is real stakes, isn't there? It's whether some of the things that's going off, people are being affected, aren't they? Real people get having real consequences.
I wonder, James, because like you've mentioned, sometimes the bigger companies, they show up in the news. The smaller companies don't show up too much on the news. What do you think for someone targeting? Is it easier to target small businesses, or is it preferable to attack bigger business? What do you think?
Good question. I suppose really it depends on the person actually doing the bad guy, really. The small business are usually a quick and easy target, might not be as big of a payoff. So it's usually like, say for instance, like you're just a person, one person running a business. You might have Facebook, Twitter, You can go, okay, I'm going to target that one person, and you can get out there, grab all the information and do a really targeted attack and maybe get somewhere between a couple of grand to 50 grand out of them, that sort of thing. Or you can put in a lot more time in researching the entire company, and you've seen ones where they've taken some companies for absolutely millions in ransomware attacks. So I think it's a case of take your pick. They're both as bad or equally as rewarding as each other, I suppose, so to speak.
Very good. So what can we do?
Just yeah, nothing. Let's just go to the pub. Yeah, I actually wanted to cover off a few things today. Actually, just key pillars of things that we can put in place. Things that aren't hard. I think that's just the frustrating thing for me sometimes is when I see people being taken advantage of, and you see things in the news is when you've kind of been in IT for a while, your brain's just screaming, going, but if only you'd just done this one little thing, you're highly likely of like not being compromised. So it's about 5 things that I wanted to cover off. Some are shorter than others. But one, understand risk and identify your key assets in your company. Protect your network access. 3, safeguard your access credentials. 4, educate yourself, your staff. And then 5, ensure that your equipment, your network equipment, everything is up to date and, data backups, that sort of thing. So like I said, some are a bit shorter than others. Some are a bit longer because they're a bit more interesting. Okay.
Sure. And maybe if you allow me to just letting our viewers know, we'll be sharing some tips and some informations at the end. We'll put them on the comments, okay? Still, if you have any questions, let us know, and we'll ask James to make a pause at the end of each topic, and we can discuss any specific question. Is that okay, James?
All good.
Thank you. So carry on. Let us go.
All right. Okay, so number 1, this is a real biggie, really. It's kind of like the foundation level, understanding, risk, identifying what you've got. So it's when you've got all these vulnerabilities, and it's without going into them too much and getting too technical. It's you've got phishing, you've got ransomware, clickjacking, and I think more and more of these are just amazingly made up words like malvertising. I mean, what is that? Software vulnerabilities. It's just an ever-growing list, isn't it? So what you've got to do is, if it's just you in a small company, or where there's a few of you, you just identify everything you've got. In other words, write it down. Everything from, I've got an iPhone and it does this. I've got a Mac, it does this. Okay, I've got my data. It's held in this cloud provision. It's got, I do my videos on YouTube. Just get it all down on paper, because it kind of, it serves a couple of purposes, really. One, if, say, for instance, you have been subjected to attack, or you're in the middle of one, like panic, things just go out the window. You just don't know what's happening. I mean, I've had it happen to me once. As I had like a legitimate email that kind of looked a bit dodgy, and I went off to kind of investigate it, and in the moment you're just like, what do I do? Where's my stuff? Like where's my login and all this, and is it genuine? So just kind of a little bit of an audit just helps you just baseline everything you've got, which then it allows you to look at it in like a process flow, to then go, where's my vulnerabilities? What am I not doing? Because if just something as little as you do Wi-Fi at home and you've not enabled decent security, but you've kind of forgotten about it because it's just your Wi-Fi. That's then like an easy way. And so if you kind of just take the time to go through it, you identify things. And that's one thing that I did with one of my customers recently. She had this entire like flow of things that she did that a customer would go through. And we were trying to figure out why, in certain circumstances, she was being ripped off. People were just running away with the product and not paying. And we kind of found that it was just a legal aspect of it. We were kind of putting some accountability, some terms and conditions in a particular part. We went through the product that she was delivering her product on, some videos. And it turns out it was just like we could enable a simple checkbox and, you know, put in a bit of a legal bit, and it kind of just brought a bit of legal accountability. And it, you know, it just kind of give a peace of mind. The second one, protect your network access. This one, I don't want to dwell on too much. I mean, it's extremely important. And if we were in any other day other than, you know, a pandemic and we're not all kind of sat at home, you could talk for a day and a week about, you know, how all the particular endpoints in your network and things like that, if you know, if you've got an office. But we are mostly all at home at the moment, aren't we? So there are things that you can do. You know, it's making sure that, like I just mentioned earlier, you know, like Wi-Fi, making sure that the encryption level that you can pick on your router is the best one. You know, making sure you're always using a VPN, things like that. And firewalls, you know, firewalls never want to be underestimated. You know, that they are still one of like the most effective things that we can have in place, even if it were just one person sat in a home office. We can have a piece of software enabled. It just helps block things coming in, and if you do get infected with something on your laptop, it's just quite easy to just click block, and it's about as effective as you can get. It's really good. So, like I said, we could probably have another session on that another day. You know, when we're hopefully when we're all you know,
actually, James, we had a client, and I remember we were checking on their network, and one problem that we've identified was they had network outlets outside of the office. So even when the company was closed, anyone could come and connect a laptop into the network, or because they have like an obvious network port on the outside wall of the premises, and this is really dangerous, right?
Yeah,
it's kind
I've seen that many times. I mean, my main background, I've got like 20 odd years experience in computer networking, so I've seen all sorts. So like, you know, like having a printer in right at the side of the main door, you know, where the network point is, you could just walk in and plug in and just get on the network. I mean, like I said, I don't particularly want to downplay that. It's still very important. It's just, I think there's more things that people have been affected by that, you know, if you kind of concentrated on more, that bit, get bigger results at the moment. So let's talk about the third one, safeguard your access credentials. Now this kind of goes beyond really just talking about access control, you know, so as in, you know, what have people got access to in your organization? The biggest thing these days is passwords. You know, it's a hot topic, isn't it? For, you know, it's always something that's cropping up, the old password. And it's because, you know, on average, an office worker, they've got about 20 to 40 different combinations of usernames and passwords that they've got to try and remember. And so it's easy to you know, for somebody to have a password that they kind of just slightly change. But it's a very expensive risk, bad passwords, which is why, like at the moment, companies like Microsoft, Apple, and Google, they're all trying to reduce our dependence on like simple password. But I suppose the ultimate question, you know, from them is, can they break our bad habits? Because, like we said, you know, passwords are just not secure. It's funny actually.
I don't put a post-it with passwords to the.
Yeah. Oh man, I can remember that. In fact, it reminds me, the first use of a computer password actually dates back to 60s in MIT. there were these, back when computers were like the size of rooms and stuff. And there was you could only have so basically a person sat down at one of these big supercomputers and it was just them, it was their processing time, and that was it. And it frustrated somebody called Fernando Corberto, I think it was. So he came up with an operating system which could timeshare all the processing across all these different computers, which then obviously kind of led to the issue of privacy, that everybody could see each of the stuff. So Corberto, he actually created passwords to allow certain people into this new time-sharing thing across all these supercomputers. But ironically, the first computer password were actually the first one to be hacked, because he was getting increasingly frustrated that he couldn't get more time on their computers. So he printed off a list of everybody's passwords and then logged in as them to kind of get more time, which I think is brilliant, really. And then you fast forward to it's 2004, when there were a particular institute said, passwords have got to be 8 characters, capital letter with a number and an exclamation mark, that sort of thing. So, everybody in the world just collectively went password 1 exclamation mark, and that was it for the next 20 odd years. But I can't underestimate enough how easy it is to crack passwords. It's just ridiculously easy. Bad passwords are by far the easiest way to compromise a system. A common 8-character password now takes less than a second for a computer to kind of go through all the possibilities and pull out the right one.
Yeah. I remember, James, there's a website that actually lets you put your password, and it will tell you the time it takes to be.
I remember that, yeah.
And that is good because it allows you to see, sometimes you think you have a hard password and then it suddenly says, 5 minutes.
Yeah. So it's kind of even easier than that these days. You don't even have to crack passwords. It's say for instance, if let's explain for a second how let's just say somebody says, oh, my Facebook was hacked and I don't know how, or that somebody got into my LinkedIn. People at the time just wonder, I just can't figure out how, it was, people got in, I have 8 characters and it was 3, 4, 5, and named after my dog, and it's not really at some point your fault. With all these data breaches that you might hear about in the news, say for instance, I don't know, you sign up to a website to get some news or something to do with your favorite dog or whatever, and you have a tendency to use the same password across all these different sites because, like what we were saying before, you've got millions of things to remember. Every time one of these websites gets data breached, all the usernames and passwords, they get collected together and sold on, it's a bit of a cliche thing to say, but like the black market sort of thing, the dark web. But I'll come on to that more in a minute. They get aggregated. So what you can do is you can go onto certain websites, and in effect, it's a little bit like doing a Google search. I could put in my email address, and it'll spit out all the passwords that I've used that have come out part of the a data breach when a password's been when a website's been hacked. So say for instance you've got LinkedIn and you've got your username and your password, and you've used exactly the same one on I like, englishbreakfasts.com. Somebody could, and that website got breached. So somebody just goes, I'm going to try that username and password on LinkedIn, and then they get in, and it's as easy as that.
Is that a real website, James?
I was desperately trying to think of some words that didn't come out that sounded like dodgy or something. I'm like, and also like a website that doesn't technically exist, so there's no comeback. Yes.
Yeah, that is very nice. Those database, I remember that website I have been pawned. That is one of the famous.
Yeah.
And some browsers now have implemented like Firefox. If you put on a password somewhere, they'll let you know if that is a known password, something like that. That is a nice service on the other side.
Can we put that on the? I'm going to put that on comments actually.
Yeah, we can share that. That is a good example.
I've come up as you. There you go. To be honest, I think a lot of people know about this. The best thing about this one is you don't see the information. You can just put in your email address, and you can register it. So any future data breaches, it emails you and say, you've been part of a data breach for British Telecom or electrical.com, that sort of thing. And if in that particular circumstance, that website owner has not been very quick to inform its users, you can go and reset your password and take a bit more of a proactive approach. But that those guys have been pawned. They're good, but they're not like the best, and they're not like the raw end of all like I suppose the dirty part of the internet. Really, there's forums that where people actually sell a hack. So say for instance a website gets they go on and they extract all usernames and passwords and credit cards and passports and stuff like that. There's a forum. It's not on dark web. When you see it in the news, everybody goes, it's being sold on the dark net. It's not. It's the real dodgy stuff is on the dark net. But there's the stuff for like buying and selling usernames and passwords. It's just like going to www.com. I'm not going to tell people what it is. And people are buying and selling stuff. But the good thing of that is that there's a lot of companies that are constantly trolling all these exposures, and that they aggregate it themselves. So like the good guys aggregate it, and then you can sign up to them, put in all your information, like absolutely everything, like your identity numbers, your passport, all your email addresses, and it proactively just it searches and it spits it out. But with the guys, those type of guys, they actually tell you the stuff that's being exposed. So you've got a little bit more of an understanding of what's gone off, which is usually a little bit more scary. But I find it helps. I've got a couple of these systems that I use for my stuff, for all my different clients, and they usually, like I said, they don't particularly like knowing that the password's out there, but it is a reality. And I think it's a case of forewarned, forearmed. So I suppose after talking about that for a while, the thing is what can you do? Unfortunately, it's a case of best effort. So a lot of these websites don't usually just say put in your email address and your password and that's it. So if that's the case and they don't offer two-factor authentication, which I'll explain what that is in a minute, it's a case of for every website, just make sure you use a unique password for every single website. Just put some gobbledygook in there, like 12 to 13, 14 characters long, and save it in a password manager. And thankfully, I think they've been highlighted a bit more recently, because LastPass, they changed their pricing structure, and so it kind of made it into the mainstream news. So there's free ones, like we obviously can put in comments about, maybe which is best one to use, or you can just Google it.
Actually, one of our lives, we've also mentioned that about the passwords and even putting random passwords which generate us.
It's like the absolute minimum thing that you can do is just for each individual website, just put in a random, password, stupidly long, stupidly doesn't make any sense, and put it in a password manager. And usually these password managers have like a master key. And for that one, I usually recommend, because you usually do want to know what it is, because you don't want to be writing that down on a piece of paper. It's just putting a long sentence, like literally your password is, hi, my name is James. I don't like Mondays, but I want to go surfing. That sort of thing, just really long. It's a sentence. Nobody's ever going to crack that in a million years unless you tell them exactly what it is.
Sorry for ruining the surfing today.
Don't worry, I can go another day. But like I said, for anybody who doesn't know, a lot of websites now are offering what's called two-factor authentication. And they used to say it's something you have and something you know. So in the early days, it'd be something you have, like an actual hardware token. And something would then be a PIN that you put into it, and it spits out an individual password. But because of the amazing advancements in mobile, it's really pushed, like fingerprint technology and biometrics and all this good stuff, and being able to scan your face. So that's kind of really taking it to what is about as secure as you can get at the moment, which is something you have, which is your phone, and then more something you are, which is your face or your fingerprint. So that's the two-factor aspect of it. But they're not all created equal, unfortunately. There's a lot of different options out there. There's a thing going off at the moment with, I think it's like Microsoft, Google, and I think Apple are just about getting on board, where there's this, it's called FIDO. I forgot what it stands for, to be honest. But they're kind of ratifying like a standard for everybody to stick to, which does the encryption, de-encryption process of that whole biometrics thing actually on the device. So there's nothing other than just let me in sort of like packet going off to the website, and that's it. There's nothing to do with the keys or anything going off. So that's all good. It's all kind of moving in right direction. And the more that people talk about these things, it gets a bit more used, which is, so it's good. So there's plenty of things that you can do, and you just using password > is a very bad idea. Okay, let's move on to.
Yeah,
sorry, go on.
If you don't mind, James, just for people who might be joining a little bit more late, we're talking about cybersecurity strategies for small business. James is an expert. He's been helping us. We've got like 5 steps you've mentioned on my notes. We've already talked about understanding the risk, having all the identifying of your digital access so it's quick to go to in case there's problems. We've talked about protecting your network access, and now you've just mentioned safeguarding your access credentials. So no password 123 or 123 or QWERTY, all of those. And also on the comments, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. We've got a comment from Alistair. Thank you for that. Thank you, guys. Great content and presentation. This goes up to James. Thank you for as well. So, James, please move on. Let's go for the 4th step. Right?
Yeah. So, education, really, which is kind of like what we're doing now, but it's a continuous process for both you and, if you've got lots of staff, them as well, because really this is the linchpin. Really, this is where it really comes down to when you see a lot of stuff in the news and it's like, wow, we've been hacked, and you delve into it, it really does come down to just something really stupid we're done. It's as simple as that. There's something that should be common sense isn't common sense because nobody's told them. I don't want to go down the whole road of, anybody who clicks a link in an email, is not knowing what they're doing. It's not the case. These things are getting ever more convincing and authentic, and it happens. So like I said, with education, it's a lot like the things that we've been talking about now, but in a more of a gradual environment, a gradual sort of thing, where it is just everybody just gets a little bit more on board, like you produce examples, maybe it's like a training course or something like that, or maybe it's something like what I offer, which I'll talk about at the end. But like I said, I'm going to talk about two things really that kind of come down to a lack of education. It's phishing and ransomware.
James,
and like I said,
just by the way, if you don't mind, just I think I'm an IT guy as well, and I've seen how people have dealt with this. And one thing that we are sure is that more people are more aware because they've got more to lose. Now everyone's online, everyone they've got their social media, their email. So no one wants to be breached and have the WhatsApp account lost, something like that. So everyone is getting more aware because more people are aware of the risk, right? So that also helps companies and of course small companies as well.
No, you're right. In fact, I've got a story from, I think it was in 2000 and American politics, 2016, I think it was. There was the US Democratic National Committee. They got hacked based on a single email. I mean, you might remember, I think it was just before President Trump got elected. There was all sorts of things coming out, all these emails. And to be honest, it was a pretty standard phishing attack. There was an employee. She worked for, I think it's called the DCCC. And this email, it was a Google security alert. It was asking her to log on and change her password. And I've seen it. It looks completely legitimate. But what it actually was is Russian hackers. And because she clicked the link, it led to them installing some software on her computer. And they were able to track everything that she was doing, keystrokes, screens, you name it, just everything that she did. They were looking at, they recorded. And then obviously as they were carrying on watching her, she started logging into more and more secure networks, to which they then got all the details for, and it didn't stop there. They installed malware on more computers on that network, and it got to the point where, like I said, they released all these emails, everything that they captured from this secure network, all from one phishing email. It was absolutely ridiculous. But then the funny thing is that there was actually about 76 people that these Russian hackers had tried targeting with these emails, and one of them was a guy called I think it was John Podesta. I think it was John Podesta. He received a Google security notice. In fact, I've got the exact email that he received. Let me see if I can share my screen without like knocking myself off or anything daft like that. Is that the one? Is that working? Hopefully everybody can see it.
It is working, yeah.
So this is the exact email that he received. And I mean, you can see, I mean, it's simple, but it's effective. It looks like it's from Google. I mean, as you can see at the top, it says that it's from accounts@gmail.com. It uses his first name, so that's a big thing straight away. My Siri's just kicked in, asking if I want Well, that's worrying. My Siri just kicked in asking me about Russian hackers, so I'll skip over that. Going back to the email, so it's very convincing. But the one thing that this guy did, that John did, he actually forwarded it to his IT team, who wrote back and genuinely said, yeah, it's don't do anything, but just look at their response. Bear with me a second while I get this one up. This was their response. He said, as you can see straight away, it says John needs to change his password immediately and ensure he's got two-factor authentication on, which is all great. But can you see up at the top, in their haste, instead of saying this is an illegitimate email, they actually wrote this is a legitimate email. And the rest, as they say, is history. So yeah, the Democratic Committee got absolutely annihilated because of just of a couple of simple mistakes. So, you know, if they'd had proper training, they wouldn't have, I mean, they might have gone, oh, you know, it looks a bit odd. If you're not sure, you need somebody to fall back on to kind of send it to and say, is this genuine? Like the other guy did, but it didn't quite work out. So there's things that we can do. You know, you can examine the URL that it comes from, because it's usually not, you know, that's the bit that these people really fall down on. Is the email looks, excuse me, the email looks amazing, but if you were to hover your mouse over that bit where it said change password, you'd probably see that it wasn't actually going to google.com. It's a bit, I like russiandonuts.com or something like that. And then what else can you do? Like I said, if you know, 56% of people do actually click on links, you know, it's especially during pandemic, it's gone through the roof, you know, with COVID vaccines and stuff like that, you know, people trying to rip you off, do silly things. If somebody's asking for money, or if a company's proactively, you know, sending you an email saying, you know, change your password and stuff like that, it probably is bad. So in a bit, we've got like a list of stuff that we're going to put out, that it's just common sense stuff, like, you know, if it looks fishy, just don't do it. If the other good one really is if, say for instance, you get one from like eBay or PayPal and Google, and it says there's a button there that says change your password, just close the email and go to the actual website. That's it. You know, like you could instantly get rid of all the problems just by not being so, you know, click happy on it. But
I think
we've all done it, Miguel, haven't we? We've all done it, to be honest.
Yeah. I was thinking the problem is kind of like when you have the recycle bin with stuff, you just want to amp it, or you see a notification, you just want to click it, and the links is similar. You just want to press it and move on with it. And then when you come to a strange place, you figure out, well, why did I click?
Yeah. You know, I suppose when you've kind of been in industry a while, you do. It is easy to think, oh, you know, people, you know, why do they do it? But they're getting so good. You know, these emails. I mean, I was asked recently by a client to do one of these like mock phishing campaigns, because, you know, part of education, you know, educating people, it's like sending emails out to, you know, to kind of, I suppose, trip people up really. And you report it, and then you know who needs more training. But I can tell you firsthand that, you know, people like, you know, like well-known hosting people, you know, like WordPress, Namecheap, or Bluehost. I know there's too many to mention. They're getting really, really good at knowing the code that you can put up where these things normally are. Because there's tools that, you know, like as an ethical hacker, there's, you know, you've got Kali Linux. I don't want to get too technical on this call, but it is so easy to generate these things. It's literally a menu system. You can go on and go, oh yeah, I want to create a phishing campaign, number one. And then it goes, okay, well, we've got 3 to 4 templates for you. Do you want Twitter? Do you want Google? Do you want this? And you just click it and it goes off, drags down the actual code from Google and presents it. And you just have in your, where you're hosting it, just like a piece of software that's capturing everything that somebody's putting in. So if say, for instance, you clicked on change password, like I said earlier, comes up with another screen and you put in your email address, Google, and then you go, oh yeah, this is my password, or this is what I want to change it to, for instance. It's just being captured in the back end, and then somebody just takes that, logs on as you, and there we go. What else were I talking about? Something else. Yeah, quickly, ransomware, because that's like, you know, that's gone bonkers at the moment. This is all part of the whole education thing, because 97% of ransomware starts with a phishing attack. So if I didn't explain before, I don't think I did. Phishing really just means that somebody's sending you a targeted email to kind of get things off you. So, you know, phishing is all trying to hook you. But like I said, you know, the biggest thing, it starts with an email. Ransomware, they're trying to get you to install a piece of software so it can take over. But it spreads so easily as well. You know, they're looking. It's just a very simple reason why that they're doing this. It's money. So you know they're trying to. They send all these emails. They're trying to get you to download a piece of software. It encrypts all the files on your computer, and they ask for money and Bitcoin in return to decrypt them. And at that point, there's actually not a lot you can do once everything's encrypted, which is why everybody gets in such of a mess. You know, like I've often seen things of, like get some program to decrypt it, but the encryption is so good that it would just take forever to try and decrypt the encryption that they use. And these days, you know, it's getting even more easier. I mean, I've seen a product recently where, you know, like you get like a website and they sort of say it's like software as a service or cloud as a service. There's actually now ransomware as a service where you can go onto these darknet forums and for like $150, you can get a login to a website with a dashboard. And you just click and you go, okay, yeah, I'd like some ransomware, please, and it spits it out, sends it you, and all you've got to do is send it to people. And if they click on it, if they if they fall for it, then that's it. You know, for the sake of a couple of bucks.
They're trying to grow their business as well, James. Huh?
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's as simple as just cash. It's just money. This is why people do these things. But there is, I think what we'll, let me have a think. I'll put this on now. So we'll just, because the thing to do with ransomware, the biggest thing that you can do to get around it, did that work?
Are you trying to share your screen?
No, I put them top tips on.
Sorry, we've got it here. You're saying this is the number 1,
yeah.
2, 3.
I may need to clear that down a bit because it just seems to have put it out.
Okay, so everywhere. You can make a summary of it. Never click on unverified links. Do not open untrusted email attachments. Only download from sites you trust. Avoid giving out personal data. Use mail server content scanning and filtering. We've got more. Never use unfamiliar USBs or even cables. Think of hygiene. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Keep your software and operating system updated. Use a VPN when using public Wi-Fi. and using security software, and keep security software updated. And the last one, backup your data. I'm a big fan of a backup your data, because I know even if you are very careful, sometimes you really need a backup.
Yeah. It's kind of a case of protecting yourself against yourself, really, the whole backups thing. I mean, that's why I've kind of just saved it for, it's like a transition bit from where I've started talking about ransomware, which you can talk about all day, but really it kind of then slots into point 5 about ensuring that all your equipment, your network equipment, everything, your laptop, your phone, everything's updated with the latest software. That's a massive thing that you can do. But the biggest thing that you can do to save yourself from a headache with ransomware, because you could do everything in the world and still get, this dodgy piece of software coming in from somewhere, is backups. That's like the single biggest thing that you can do, because I read about, I think it was in last April. I can't remember what day or month it is now, so I'm just going to say last April. That there were a company in Michigan. I think they were called Brookside Hearing Center, something like that. And they got this ransomware on their computers, all of them. But they refused to pay the $6,500. And so the hackers, there is no like bluff, it's not like poker. They just deleted everything. So they encrypted absolutely everything within this company, and it forced them to shut down permanently, to this day. In fact, these two doctors ended up retiring because they said that were more cost effective, which I think is quite funny, than actually paying. But the not funny bit is that all the patient records were just deleted, and that was it. They had no backups. They had absolutely nothing. So, I'm not gonna sit here and say that I can prevent people getting ransomware. But if you just did the simple thing of backing up all your data, you could just say to them, delete it away, and you just restore, find out how it got in, and carry on from there. You don't have to pay up. And it's in most cases that I've looked into, nobody's done anything as simple as backing things up, so they just lose everything. So it's a good thing to get into. Like I keep saying, whether it's just you as an entrepreneur, or whether there's a few of you, or whether you're a big company, backups are just a simple thing that just saves so much headache. And I've got a few options that I recommend to people. There's some cloud-based ones. They're absolutely excellent. You just install a piece of software and it backs up your entire laptop up. Or if you're a Mac user, you've got iCloud and things like that, where everything just automatically backs up. So there's options. There's lots of options. It's just picking which one's best for you. So they're kind of like the 5 biggest things that you could do really to either protect yourself, or if you have got yourself into a tricky situation, to dig yourself out of quite easily. But I suppose we'll save the best for last. It's which I didn't mention at the front, at the beginning of this, is that get some outside experience in. Just because you're a small company doesn't mean that you can't call on somebody to just identify, where you've got, a little hole there, or, like a little bit of a weakness there, or, like doing an audit on you as a person. I've done that quite a few times. I've just actually audited the person, looked where, because you might go for years putting your information out on social media and you forget that you've done something. There's things that out there that you can delete. So yeah, you were saying again?
Yeah, I think sometimes, in smaller organizations, or 1 or 2, 3 people, sometimes you think you've got it covered, right? But there are some blind spots, and sometimes, like you were saying, someone from the outside could see it clearer. We've got a question. Let me put here. Oh, it's Carlos. Carlos, you mentioned you spoke earlier about firewalls when talking about router and other things. You were speaking in hardware or software firewalls. What about firewalls in a software level? Do you think that is important even for a user that is cautious, or do you recommend firewalls besides Windows Firewall antivirus only for users that are not so cautious? Because some firewalls give some phishing protection by detecting suspicious emails, right? Okay, a couple of questions.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what.
We've got this divided. If you want to, it's easy to read.
I got the gist. I'll tell you what I do. I'm at home and I don't mind telling you what I do. So you kind of get a standard router from your internet provider, and they usually have a basic something on, just to kind of like stop things coming in, but they're not particularly great. If you were really wanting to protect yourself and you had a bit of money to burn, you could get a hardware firewall in place, where you could really implement really specific rules where you could say, well, this can access that, but that can't access that. Maybe there's 5 or 6 here and a little smaller for somewhere or above. That'd be the right thing to do. Getting a device that only certain people have access to. So it's not a free for all. Putting in decent rules, and a lot of the firewalls these days are really intelligent. They call them application level firewalls, where they can scan right into what's called the packet. Everything that's flowing through, you can just tell that it's a virus, or whether you've put in a dodgy website address. It's like an all-encompassing thing. But then not everybody can do that. So the software that you can install from multiple providers, I use Bitdefender. I think they're awesome because they're run by guys who are actually, in background, they're actually like hackers. They're the guys that are actually off trying to exploit stuff, but then they change it into, some software that protects you. And it's a little bit like putting a shield around yourself. You install it, and it's just an extra layer where anytime a piece of software that you're trying to install and it doesn't recognize, it's not being provided by a decent company, it flags up straight away saying that we've blocked this application, we don't want it to run, and you have to actually click a button saying allow. They also have a thing where you can say that these are my really protected files. So if you do get a ransomware, it's got like an extra section that it's cornered off where no other program can interact with. So it's like all your personal, all your family photos or your work documents and things like that, whatever it might be. And then it has like a firewall as well, so like you have to actually say what can come in, what can come out. And then it's got antivirus, so it's constant scanning things. So it really, I suppose, to answer your question, Carlos, it just depends on who you are, who your budget is. I've been in IT for a while, and I've kind of gone from, like installing like a massive server and doing all whiz bangs and stuff. But, it's a little bit of an overkill. So I've got the full blown Bitdefender software, and I'm really happy. I've tested it a few times as well with some stuff, and it's really quick and it's really good. So it's kind of like what I've said before, really, about doing an audit on who you are. You don't just want to go out and spend a couple of grand on some hardware that you don't need, when a piece of software for $50 would be just as good and protect you, probably even better, because say, for instance, somebody gets on your Wi-Fi and they're bypassed, in a way, your firewall, and your laptop's a load of rubbish and they can get onto it, then, the expensive hardware firewalls are a waste of time. Whereas if the software's on your laptop, you're encased, about as close to you as possible. You've got the protection. I'll do both.
I think that's a good tip, huh? If anyone else has more questions, please feel free to ask them now, as we are coming to an end. We've been almost an hour going. So just to remember the kinds of topics we've talked about a kind of 5-step strategy, as we've mentioned. We're going to also leave this in the comments, whoever wants to do it. This will also stay on YouTube and on the other media. So if anyone didn't have the opportunity to see it from the beginning, or if they want to review it, they can come back to it as well. So we've talked about making kind of like an inventory of identifying your key assets. You've mentioned protecting your network, safeguarding the credentials, educate the users, ensure everything's updated in terms of network equipment, backups. I love backups. And also you mentioned the get outside expertise if needed, of course. And James, imagine, security is never bulletproof, right? There's so many levels of security, or else not even, NSA, the Russian hackers, all of this and all, even as users and small companies, even if we are really careful, it also depends on the resources and time the criminals have as well. And so we need to have this in terms. But one illustration that you've talked about was about that comparison. If I've got 2 houses and one has a security system and the other don't, well, the thieves or the burglars, they'll try the one that is not obvious there's a security implemented. So sometimes lazy hackers or lazy criminals, they'll target the weaker, right? And we don't want to be the weaker in that sense. So thank you, James, for all your time, your answers. We've got a question here. Let's see if you can help. How to become a cybersecurity specialist without a college CS degree? What would you say to Ketchant? Thank you for the question.
Yeah, good question. To be honest, I've never particularly been a fan of degrees. I think they get you in the door in certain organizations, but but by the time it's gone through the knowledge factory, and like somebody's got it on a book, and then they've published it, and then it goes through all these like reiterations and stuff. The information's out of date and it's just not relevant. There's so many things that you can do now to just hit the ground running and get some real world experience. There's courses that you can take. If you don't know the basics, obviously, it'd be pointless sort of like disappearing off to a website and trying to start, in these like virtual safe environments, trying to hack, there's lots of things that you can do to just pick up a book, start, like reading different things, like have like a course in mind, maybe like, the certified ethical hacker or things like that. There's a couple that you can look at. And I genuinely think that companies would respect that more, that sort of like real world course or experience than they would a degree any day. There's a website that you could ultimately start getting into. I forgot what it's called. There's Hack the Box. They're really good. It's like a virtual environment where you can go on. It's like gamified, and it presents you like a virtual environment. So let's just say it's a Windows PC and a Windows server and a Linux box, and it gives you a scenario, and it says, okay, based on this information, how do you get the file that's based in such and such folder, or how do you compromise this? And it's a little bit, it's like real, but it is a game. So like you're learning at the same time. And these guys are, they're really, really good. It's not just like, a hack from 1980s, pick up a phone and whistle into it and, you'll hack the box sort of thing. So it's all really, really good. So I'd say that really, just do that in some, one of those type of websites in conjunction with going through an actual book to do with ethical hacking, and you'll pick it up in no time. And I'd respect somebody for doing that more than turning up and wanting an interview just because they've got a university degree based on security.
Very good. Thank you, James. So we will be wrapping up. Thank you all for joining. If you are not connected to James, we're going to leave also his contacts. Maybe we can put it also in the comments. They can connect to you, James, and make you some difficult questions if they want to.
Yeah, obviously, anybody feel free to connect to me on LinkedIn. Let's have a look. I'm James J. Clifford on LinkedIn. So I always get stuff to do with more career-based things on that. This is a new one for me. I've started like a free email series, which is just education, really, for anybody. It's free. It's you get like an email once a week, and it's anything from teaching you about different things that are going off, like phishing and ransomware, what to look out for. A lot of the things like what I've been saying today, but in a lot more of a slower, more understandable pace. Like an email once a week, so you're not overwhelmed. Like one email might be to do with learning more about phishing, or it might be an example of a phishing attack, and then I go, no, you shouldn't have clicked on this. But it's all about building like a shield around yourself, really, kind of like cover off everything. And I'll make recommendations to do with maybe like what antivirus to use and things like that. So yeah, that's something I'm excited about in a minute.
Okay, so thank you all. I think there's no more questions. We have been doing this series of lives. We've been doing them in Portuguese. Most of our customers, they are still Portuguese, even though we've got a small few that are international businesses. But today we had to take the opportunity to talk about cybersecurity with James. He's an expert. He guided us through this session. Thank you for that, and thank you all for joining us. And hope at least has been educating. And then, everyone can be a victim, but let's try to be less of victims and more of educators to help each other, especially on business. Everyone's trying to put an effort. And to a special thank you, James, for sure.
Thank you,
and see you guys, and see you next time.